My wealthy parents humiliated me all my life and kicked me out of the house. Now that I have a successful business, they suddenly reached out. I'm 27 years old, and a year ago I started my own business with a couple of friends from college. Financially, we're doing great now, and we are already making a profit. A few days ago, my parents, both 54 years old with whom I haven't spoken since college ended, suddenly contacted me and offered to become partners in my business because they wanted to invest. I refused. I didn't discuss it with my friends because everyone knew I had bad relations with my parents, and under no circumstances did I want to involve them in our business. My parents always neglected and bullied me as a child, which was, to put it mildly, strange since I was the kind of kid parents usually take pride in. Both are well off. My dad is a dental surgeon. My mum is a financial director of a company. I grew up in a family of achievers and was naturally very ambitious from early childhood. But for some reason, my parents never supported me and constantly mocked me for being a nerd. They had plenty of money, but barely met even my basic needs. I had no idea why they hated me until I realized they indirectly blamed me for not achieving the success they dreamed of. They were quite successful, but never became famous as they wanted. I found out about this when I was 16, after complaining to my aunt, the youngest sister of my father, now 46, the only person who understood me. She told me the truth about my parents' unreasonable hatred, thinking I was old enough to know. My parents blamed me for the time and money they spent raising me, thinking that if they had invested those resources into their careers, they'd have achieved much more. They had a child under pressure from relatives and didn't really want kids. Since I appeared, they had to put up with me somehow, and they chose bullying and constant humiliation. As a child, I was deprived of a lot, even though they paid for everything. There was no real help from them, not with small things like homework or projects, nor with serious problems like school conflicts. If I asked about something unnecessary, they just brushed me off, or worse, mocked me. They mocked my appearance because I was skinny and looked like a typical nerd. They laughed at my interest in computers and said I'd amount to nothing more than an IT guy. That was my ceiling, so investing money in me was a waste. They emotionally ignored me. I got used to such insults from childhood and didn't see anything strange about it then. I thought it was my fault. That's why my parents didn't love me as they should. It was pretty awful, but for me, it was normal. In my teenage years, I started to protest a little against their harsh attitude. But my father quickly suppressed this by threatening to throw me out onto the street if I didn't calm down. So instead of open protest, I vented to my aunt, who asked me 1,000 times if I wanted her to report our family situation to social services, but I always said no because I was afraid of the consequences. My aunt couldn't adopt me, and I didn't want to be a burden, so I chose to suffer at my parents' house. When it got really bad, I talked to my aunt, and it helped. When I finally understood the reason behind my parents' behavior, I decided to disappear from their lives right after college graduation since they didn't care about me. They sent me to a public school. Sorry if this sounds arrogant, but I think it was a waste of my potential. Anyway, it was a clear sign that they didn't care about my education or me in general. However, I still had some expectations from them, which completely collapsed when they announced that after I finished school and turned 18, there would be no place for me in their house until I achieved some success on my own. Moreover, they refused to pay for my college education. I completely lost it and told them they couldn't treat me like that because I knew I had a great future. I had been an excellent student all my life, and if they threw me out right before college started, my future would be at risk, but they stood their ground and said, "You have no future. Stop overestimating yourself." Then they added that I shouldn't hope for a bright future because teachers and friends mistakenly convinced me that I was a genius, while the best I could do was be a regular IT guy fixing computers for idiots in offices. Honestly, it was complete nonsense because even those supposedly worthless IT guys have deep knowledge and deserve respect, but my stupid, awful parents would never understand that. I tried to convince them to at least pay for my education. Housing could be figured out later, but they were adamant. So, a few weeks before my 18th birthday, I ran away from home and went to my aunt's. I applied for scholarships to many colleges, and my aunt kept trying to persuade my parents to help me, but it was useless. In the end, we decided I would go to the college that gave me the biggest discount. Luckily, I got accepted to a college with a scholarship covering 80% of the tuition and a good computer science program, which suited me. My aunt decided to pay the rest. She worked in sales and didn't earn much compared to my parents, but still agreed to help. Plus, thanks to the scholarship, the education was relatively affordable. I lived in a dorm and visited my aunt when she was home. She often went on business trips. That's how I spent my student years. My life improved significantly when I left my parents' house. Constant anxiety and worries disappeared. I became happier and found it easier to make friends. That's how I met my current friends and business partners, with whom we eventually started our own ID company. Now we're doing relatively well. I thought my parents wouldn't care what I was doing because there were issues even back when I was in school. However, when they found out I was graduating college as the valedictorian, they decided to come to the graduation ceremony. Of course, they couldn't get inside because I didn't buy tickets for them and didn't invite them. Since we hadn't been in contact, we met after the ceremony, and I was shocked to see them there with my aunt, who looked just as irritated as I was. I had plans to go out drinking with friends, but instead, I spent the next 2 hours in a hotel room with my parents, arguing and fighting. They were furious that I hadn't invited them to the graduation but had invited my aunt, and they demanded an explanation. It was ironic, considering they kicked me out when I was 18 and refused to pay for my education, even though they had the means, given all the cruel treatment in my childhood and the emotional problems that still affect my adult life. I felt they didn't deserve any explanations. But I didn't want them to cause a scene in front of everyone, so I walked them to the hotel. There, I finally lost it and told them exactly what I thought of them. I told them I never wanted to see them again, and that if they tried to contact me again, I would get a restraining order or something similar. Then I left the hotel and went to meet my friends. I wasn't going to let my parents ruin my happy day. After that, we never spoke again. Later, I learned from my aunt that my parents were disappointed and angry and even discussed disinheriting me. That didn't change anything since I never expected to get anything from them. That's where it ended. Almost 7 years passed and we hadn't talked. Then, a few days ago, they suddenly called. They asked my aunt for my number, saying they wanted to apologize. She gave them my number. She was going to warn me, but forgot. I understand, she's been busy lately, so it's okay, I don't hold it against her, but I didn't hear any apologies. My parents immediately moved on to a business proposal because now investing in me was profitable. Naturally, I refused, hung up, and blocked them. Then I told my friends about it. They didn't mind that I refused without consulting them since they knew my whole history with my parents. I didn't know what to expect next, but the very next day my parents struck back. They tagged me and all my friends in a sarcastic Facebook post, claiming I wasn't the independent computer genius I thought I was, but just a guy who achieved moderate business success using daddy's money. Now, supposedly, I refuse to acknowledge the help they supposedly gave me all these years. I was completely shocked by the post and almost called them to tell them off. But before doing that, I decided to respond with something I had kept for years. I had a few old videos recorded during my teenage years when I lived with them, documenting everyday life just in case I'd ever need proof in court of how terrible parents they were. I never posted them because I didn't want anything to do with them. And I was sure that if I uploaded videos showing them being rude, mocking, and treating me like dirt, it would definitely have consequences. Back then, I just didn't want extra drama, so I did nothing. However, their Facebook post changed everything. And I finally posted those videos. Here comes the moment where I might have acted like a fucking asshole. I wrote a long post on Instagram explaining the whole story of my relationship with my parents and shared those videos exposing them. After that, I called my lawyer and explained everything. But she was already ahead of me and started preparing documents to sue my parents for defamation. She was also going to contact my partners to see if they agreed with the lawsuit since their names were mentioned in my parents' Facebook post. Under my parents' post, several relatives and friends of theirs commented, saying it was great that I was finally exposed and that they would never do business with us. So there was definitely a basis for the lawsuit. I sent screenshots to my lawyer and informed my partners to keep them updated. Once all this was done, I expected my parents to call begging for forgiveness, and indeed, they called demanding apologies and claiming that I messed up by posting those videos. Their argument was that they posted their accusations on private Facebook accounts, so only a limited number of people saw them, while I made my post on a public profile seen by many more people. Considering my followers, they demanded I immediately delete the post because people had already started sending them insults and even threats. This could ruin their careers since they looked terrible in the videos, and if their employers saw them, it would be the end. I lost my temper a little and told them they got what they deserved, then hung up. Still, I archived my post and turned off my phone for a while. When I checked my phone again a few hours later, I saw a letter from my parents. They apologized for everything that happened in the past, but emphasized that my revenge was terrible. Moreover, I posted personal videos featuring them without their consent, which, according to them, gave them grounds to sue me as well. Obviously, they were already served with a defamation lawsuit. They said I must withdraw it, or they would not hesitate to publicize my unethical behavior, which would negatively affect my business. I discussed this with my partners, and they believe we have no reason to back down because I did the right thing, unlike my parents, who lied and deliberately distorted facts to make me look like a liar and lose credibility. Their point might sound reasonable, but for some reason, I still feel guilty continuing with the case since my parents apologized in the letter. I understand this lawsuit will bring negativity to all sides, one way or another. I don't know what to do next. Tell me, am I wrong for suing my parents for defamation even after they apologized? Update 1. Hello everyone. So, I've decided to continue the lawsuit for several reasons. First of all, this decision was made not only by me, but also by my friends and business partners. Although their post got wide exposure like mine, I'm sure many people saw it and this could seriously harm our business. Also, it was clear that my parents' goal was to ruin my reputation and that of my company to satisfy their ego by destroying the work of my life. So, the defamation accusations are well-founded. Second, their apologies are worth absolutely nothing because they only said them when their own careers were threatened. They weren't sincere and apologized only for their own benefit. I never stood up to my parents my whole life because I was afraid of them. Even now, almost 30 years old, I'm still scared to go against them. This fear has become like a part of me. It's so deeply rooted that I didn't even realize it until you pointed out in the comments how many times I had chances to tell people the truth about my parents but stayed silent because I feared the consequences. But now I realize nothing threatens me anymore. I have all the power now and they can no longer hurt me. I will sue them despite their fake apologies. Let's see how this ends. One thing I'm sure of, I will make them pay. I'm tired of being the good guy, especially with people who don't deserve it at all. My parents treated me cruelly and no child deserves such a childhood. And now that I have the chance to get revenge on them, I will do it. Until now, I stayed above all this, but I see no reason to act like that anymore when they keep attacking me just to get attention. It's disgusting and I'm not going to tolerate it anymore. Update 2 today, my aunt contacted me to check what I decided about the situation with my parents. I told her we're continuing the lawsuit. She was happy with my decision and said she's proud of me. She also apologized for not doing enough for me in childhood, though honestly, I don't blame her. At that time, she was just starting her career and couldn't fully take care of me. But when it was needed, she stepped in and helped, and I will always be grateful to her. My grandparents and other relatives literally idolized my parents, so no one would believe me if I told them how my parents really treated me. Even if my aunt had gone to social services, I might have ended up in foster care or worse. I'm not saying she's perfect, but I feel the need to protect her now when many criticize the only person who ever stood up for me and supported me with all her might. That's all. I haven't communicated with my parents since their last letter, and they probably still expect me to withdraw the lawsuit. It's been 4 days, and we decided to first try to negotiate through a court-appointed mediator. If needed, we'll go to court, but for now, we want to settle out of court. My parents have money quite a lot, so I have no reason to blame myself. They fucked up, so they have to pay. I don't know what's going on with their jobs now because after I posted those videos, they started freaking out, accusing me of threatening their careers. It's hard to believe how much manipulation and drama was in their calls and letters. Luckily, I didn't fall for it, otherwise, that would have been very sad. They tried to make my actions look as bad as theirs or worse. They spread false rumors about me, and I only responded by exposing the truth to everyone. Honestly, I really want to retrieve those videos from the archive after negotiations because my parents truly deserve to be exposed and the whole world should see their true face. Update 3 today, the court approved a mediator for our negotiations and notified us My parents called me, and I temporarily unblocked their number to ask when exactly I'm going to withdraw the lawsuit since the situation is getting out of control. I told them that it's not going to happen, and they literally lost it. They started screaming incoherently. I barely understood what they were trying to say. One thing was obvious: they were furious. There was a lot of meaningless yelling, and I just hung up. But they immediately called back. This time, my father said I really pissed him off and that these tricks don't scare him at all. I stood my ground and finally told them everything I think about them. It was harsh but absolutely necessary. After that call, I felt huge relief. After saying everything, I just hung up without giving them a chance to argue more. But they didn't back down, and after that, they called my aunt and told her I'm suing them without any grounds, which is absolutely not true. They tried to manipulate her feelings to make her pity them and convince me to stop the process. However, my aunt is not so easy to break. Besides, my parents often use the argument, but we're family, he should still work with us. So she told them exactly what I asked her to say, that she could express sympathy but nothing more. If they keep calling her, they'll lose even that sympathy and she will report them to the police for harassment. That was cool of her. After that, I didn't hear from my parents for several hours until the evening. It turned out that when they couldn't turn my aunt to their side, they contacted almost all relatives, telling them I'm suing without reason. In the end, all relatives started sending me the same message. It was a poorly executed idea because it became obvious my parents sent everyone the exact same template message without even changing it a bit. Most just forwarded it word for word. It was clear my parents coached them, hoping to make me change my mind. Honestly, it's even sad how desperately they're trying to fix the situation, knowing it's hopeless. Update: for the court case officially started. We're currently on a break. I just had lunch and am writing this post sitting in the hall. My parents were spitting venom, but it's obvious they're losing. If they want to avoid a full trial, they'll have to agree to our terms. When we went on the lunch break, my father was staring daggers at me, and my mother tried to comfort him by pretending to be a helpless woman, but no one bought it because we all understood it was just an act. My friends and business partners are incredibly supportive and stand by me at every stage of this process, and I'm very grateful to them. Even now, one of my friends said if after all this I want to talk, he's always there because he understands how emotionally hard this is for me. I'm sincerely thankful that despite my terrible parents, I have wonderful friends and a loving aunt. I really appreciate everything I have.